Hey, Coco. Hey, everybody. Pardon my eyes. Wow, I've just gotten like hay feverish symptoms here the last couple minutes. Hi, baby. You want to say hi to everybody? Come here. Come up here. My doggy's here, but she doesn't usually get up on my lap. She's a big girl. You're a good girl, aren't you? I just had a piece of salmon, so she's very interested in me right now. So let me talk a little bit about that assignment. It's not a big thing at all, but I think it'll be helpful. As I mentioned, excuse me, it's that hay feverish thing I was talking about. You're reading for today from Hart and Fisher, our Catholic authors, placed a lot of emphasis on a lot of references to experience. And I'll say, first of all, in terms of my theological life, the category of experience has been a really fascinating one to me. There's some books that have been pretty important in my life. I'll just mention a couple so that you know. I'm just trying to introduce you to some of the literature of, like we'll say, of the field of the discipline. Probably the most famous book, kind of like exploring what we'll call religious experience, was a book published a little over a century now, by a man named William James. And William James was both a philosopher and a psychologist, taught at Harvard in both areas. Back then, one might be able to do that. Today, the increasing professionalism of each academic guild would make that very difficult. But James was kind of a genius. He was invited to give the Gifford Lectures, which is an annual, the most prestigious lecture series in the world, the history of the world. Point Loma has its own lecture series. It's a nice one. It's called the Wiley Lectures. We have our Wiley lecturer coming later this spring, and you'll be offered extra credit to go to some of those, or to go as many of those as you can and write papers as you wish. But the Gifford Lectures, I think, are put on at, I want to say at Edinburgh University in Scotland. Anyway, James was invited to do those early in the 20th century, and his lectures eventually were published under the title, very famous title now, The Varieties of Religious Experience. That's probably the classic. He did not write as a believer per se. He was more of like a wanna believer. He had a lot of sympathy for, and sort of a built-in trust for, people's testimonies about the ways they felt like they'd experienced, we'll say the presence of God, in various ways, varieties of religious experience. And we may talk about William James some more later in the semester. He's a very fascinating figure to me and to many others. More recently, there's a book called Fits, Dreams and Visions, or Fits, Trances and Dreams, or something like that. Very, sort of referring to pretty dramatic experiences. The subtitle is something about religious experience or experiencing religion, maybe experiencing religion and religious experience from Wesley to James. And the Wesley is John Wesley, of whom we have spoken, and the James is the William James I just spoke of. So John Wesley lived during basically the whole 18th century. William James lived in the second half of the 19th century and then into the early 20th century. So there's not a lot of time between them, but the author of this book is Ann Taves, a scholar I really, really like and admire a lot. And her book is on the various ways in which, particularly Americans, but she does start with John Wesley, who was British, but had such influence on the Methodist movement here in the United States. So hers is sort of a tracing of the very many different ways in which people had, we'll say, religious experiences or awareness of God or of the divine in some really extreme ways. And then, the controversies that inevitably attach themselves to such experiences or claims to such experience. There's really, like, included in her book, although not centrally, but a great example would be Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, whose claims were founded on his, at least his alleged visionary experiences and probably some auditory experiences of the presence of Christ and so on. That's just one example, of course. Now, so what I'm going to tell you real quickly, and I'll make it quick. I will talk about two of my experiences. They're all, the first one, I was there, but I was not aware of it because I was a baby. This comes from my dad, who's not exactly a big proponent of like dramatic events or, incredible manifestations of God or anything like that. The tradition he was raised in wasn't really about that sort of thing. Well, anymore. I'll say anymore. We might have to talk about that sometime too. But I've asked him about this again and again. I may ask him again while he's still with us. I'm 69, which means he's 88. He was a very young man when I was born. But he says that when I was a baby, and I was the firstborn, my dad and mom were driving like the wintertime, Christmas time. We lived in the state of Washington, and I don't know exactly where he was going, but we were going across the state from east toward the Seattle side, December, and up. It's some of you, like, I know we have at least one or two Washingtonians or at least an Idahoan or whatever. Anyway, I don't remember the name of the highway number. It's still there. It's not the main east-west by any means, but it's up farther north. Goes across the state. My dad says that it was nighttime. They're driving wherever they're going, late, rough conditions, Christmas time. And he says he was behind a big truck, probably a lumber truck, and climbing a hill, and it was a long hill, and he wanted to pass, but he couldn't see whether he should try this. And my dad says that the driver waved him like, it's clear, go ahead and pass. So my dad was not one to question such encouragement, and he stepped on the gas and starts to pass this big truck. He said he got about to the point where he was near the truck's cabin, near the driver, and they're coming to the crest of the hill, and he said there was a car coming from the other direction. Somehow the truck driver had missed this, whatever had happened. My dad said there was no time to do anything. He said, I thought we were going to buy it. I couldn't go to the right. That's where the truck was. If I gone off to the road, this up in the mountains, I don't know, he just didn't feel like he could go off the road the other direction. He had no place to go. He said, as quick as I realized we had no place to go, we were in front of the truck. Just like that. Well, I don't remember that, but my dad, I'm going to check with him one more time and say, Dad, tell me that story again. I don't know what to make of it. Obviously, many people have died in car accidents, not unlike that one. So I'm always hesitant to go, I am grateful that I'm still here, or am here, and I don't mind looking at it as a blessing, but I don't want to overdo that because there's so many people who have suffered terribly in similar or any kind of auto accident. In my own experience, and I'll do these more quickly, when I was in college, about your age, I mentioned, in fact, today in class, the professor named Morris Weigelt, who left us, went to seminary. And by the way, I ended up being a student of his in seminary again later. That's part of the rest of the story. But his replacement was a man named C.S. Coles. C.S. Initials, and then Coles, Cowles. And the basic point here is that C.S. Coles was and remains the most important human figure in my life in terms of influence and in the direction my life took. When I was a junior, his first year teaching in Nampa, so I was taking classes with him. He'd really sort of been already a big influence. And I was taking a course on the letters of Paul, and we were doing Romans. And I think it probably meant Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because I feel like there was a whole week where, so probably 3 classes where, as I walked out of the religion building up there in Nampa, Idaho, and this was the spring semester, I just have these extremely clear memories of walking out of that building each time after that class, and like I felt so weird. I would look up in the sky and I felt like something is happening to me. I don't know what it is, but something really profound. And it was because we were doing this stuff in Romans, and he was just really, this is the same guy. I quoted him the other day when he quoted Karl Barth. So I was learning Karl Barth and Barth's letter to the Romans and all this really, amazing stuff. And, I look back on it as I now really do feel like that was the week in my life when I first experienced a divine call to ministry of some kind. And it was like, I'll say again, each of those days after class, I'd practically stumble out of the building. I was so, I want to say, disoriented and like, what is happening to me? Finally, I met my wife, Janice Elaine, in seminary, Kansas City. We got married in Kansas City. Indeed, we had our first child while we were still in Kansas City, about 6 weeks before we left to move to the LA area, where I became a very young and untested pastor. While we're still in Kansas City, and Sonia was given birth, our daughter, Sonia Kim, in a difficult labor, by the way, but that's not the main point. The main point is after that baby was given birth, and the attendants allowed us just some time alone, Janice and me and our new baby girl. Janice and I both could tell you, we were in this room and we just felt like utterly engulfed in the presence of God, really, utterly engulfed. It was an amazing experience. I actually thought of one other now, but that's enough for now. Here's all I'm asking you to do. If you have, it can be more amazing by far than the things I've just mentioned, or maybe less. If you don't really have any kind of experiences like this, that's okay. I would love for you just to do a very short, I will say a report on like if you've had some kind of encounter or experience that you just felt like was unmistakably the presence of God, or something like that. Or more broadly, just if you've had some kind of very weird thing happen, and I won't even try to put limits on it. Just write about it it's not a big essay. This is not your spiritual autobiography. I just want us to think about for a little while experience in that category and what it might mean theologically and what it might mean in your own life. We'll try to come back and talk a little bit more about that category of experience on Thursday. So this will be due. I'll put the due date on it. It's short. It's not a big thing. But, I'll make it worth more than just one class session of attendance points. Thanks, everybody.